I'd like to see my balance, please.
What? Those little rats who steal and then sneak in here to scam. Do I look easy to fool, black stinking rat?
He's looking at an older black man in a dusty black coat. Right shoe split at the toe, lashed shut with a different pair's laces. 3 days of stubble.
I'd like to see my balance, please.
Bradley's smile grew cold.
Even rats scurrying around garbage dumps get accounts? Is there some apple core in them? This isn't a garbage dump! Get out!
Bradley had no idea who the homeless man he despised really was. But the man in the torn shoes had a name and a story worth telling. To understand what's about to happen in that lobby, you have to back up. 7 hours, then 7 days. This morning, before any of this, Solomon Tate woke up on a bench in Central Park. He folded the wool blanket into a tight square and slid it into the canvas duffel. He walked to the public restroom near the boathouse. He splashed cold water on his face, looked at himself in a streaked mirror, tightened the laces on the right shoe that had been split at the toe for 3 years. Solomon is 68 years old. He has slept outside every night for the past 7 nights. He does this every October. His wife Margaret was a nurse at Harlem Hospital. Years ago, she finished a 14-hour shift one Tuesday. She walked into a bank on her way home, still in her scrubs, still smelling like the ward. The teller looked at her uniform, her tired face, the dried coffee on her sleeve, and said, "Ma'am, I think you're in the wrong place." Margaret didn't tell Solomon about it for 3 days. When she did, she didn't cry. She just looked at the kitchen floor and said, "I just wanted to deposit my paycheck." That was the day Solomon learned what it cost to look tired in front of someone who didn't want to see you. Margaret died a few years after that conversation. Solomon never forgot what the teller's face looked like. So every October, on the week of Margaret's death, he goes out into the city. He dresses as the kind of man no one looks at. He sleeps where people sleep when they have nowhere else. He eats from delis and bodegas. By the time he walks into one of his own bank branches on the 7th day, the fatigue on his face is not a costume. It is the cost of remembering. This morning, after the bench, he took the long way uptown. He sat on the stoop of a brownstone in Harlem. He quietly owns the brownstone, though the boy who lives there does not know that. The boy's name is Devin, 16 years old, wants to be a doctor. They talked about chemistry homework. Solomon pulled a worn paperback of W.E.B. Du Bois out of his duffel and slid it across the step. Devin offered him half a bagel. Solomon ate it. Then he walked to the 4 train and rode south. At 86th Street, a young woman in a clean white coat looked up from her phone. She looked at Solomon. She quietly moved 2 seats away. Solomon noticed. Solomon did not react. He went back to the page he was reading. By 11:14 a.m., he was standing on Madison Avenue. In front of him, a bronze plaque that said Pemberton Heritage Trust, frosted glass, gold leaf, 2 doormen, a small placard inside the door, small enough not to scare anyone, that read, "By appointment. Minimum opening deposit $250,000. The doorman looked at his shoes. They did not stop him. New York doormen know who to stop and who to ignore. Solomon's instinct told him they had decided he was someone the manager could handle. Inside the lobby, Bradley Whitmore was laughing. He stood next to Mrs. Caldwell, a woman in pearls, one of his oldest clients, 3 accounts in a trust. He was laughing at her joke about a senator. It was a real laugh. He had a real laugh when he chose to use it. Mrs. Caldwell loved how warm he could be. Then Bradley looked over her shoulder, saw Solomon walk through the door. His jaw tightened. Without breaking eye contact with Mrs. Caldwell, he raised 2 fingers toward Officer Whitfield by the wall. 2 fingers meant, "Handle this." Behind the counter, 24-year-old Greta Hollister was eating leftovers out of a Tupperware. She had been at Pemberton 6 weeks. She was from a town in rural Pennsylvania where her father worked in a paper mill. She was the first person in her family who had ever worn a suit to work. She was quietly terrified of Bradley. She looked up. She saw Solomon step inside. She saw the worn coat, the torn shoe, the tired face. Her first instinct, before policy, before fear, was to smile at him. That smile is the only reason any of what comes next happens at all. Solomon stepped through the door. The lobby smelled like polished brass and old money. The light from the gold leaf ceiling fell soft and yellow on the travertine floor. He made it 10 feet inside before Officer Dale Whitfield stepped in front of him. "Sir." Whitfield was a heavy man with a tight collar and a radio clipped to his hip. He kept his hand close to that radio while he spoke. "This is a private bank. I'm going to need to see some ID." Solomon kept his voice level. "I'm a customer. Sir, ID." Pemberton's actual policy does not require walk-in customers to show ID at the door. Whitfield had never asked a man in a tailored coat for ID. He was asking Solomon because Bradley's 2 fingers had told him to. Behind Solomon, the lobby noticed. A man in a charcoal suit lowered his newspaper. The older couple by the gold leaf wall stopped talking. Mrs. Caldwell turned her head just enough to see. Solomon reached slowly into his coat. He took out a worn leather card holder. He opened it. Inside was a single card, black, no logo, an embossed silver star in one corner, 16 digits across the front. Whitfield glanced at it, did not read it. He looked past Solomon's shoulder, waiting. Bradley arrived a moment later. He arrived smiling. "Good morning, sir. How can Pemberton help you today?" The smile was for the room, for Mrs. Caldwell standing 12 feet away in her pearls, for the toddler in the stroller by the window, for the older couple in chairs near the gold leaf wall. The smile said, "Relax, the manager is handling this." Then Bradley leaned in close to Solomon's ear. His voice dropped to a register only Solomon could hear. "The shelter is on 31st Street, 6 blocks south. Walk fast and you'll get a bed before noon." Solomon did not flinch. His right hand brushed the canvas duffel at his hip, the bag with Margaret's photograph inside it, the only thing he kept on his body when he did this. He felt the shape of the photograph through the fabric. He kept his voice level. "I'd like to see my balance." Bradley took the card holder out of Solomon's hand. He glanced at the black card. He did not actually read the digits. He closed the card holder and slid it into his own suit jacket pocket, as if it belonged to him now. "This is stolen. It's mine. It's stolen. That card is registered to my account at this bank." Bradley smiled wider. "Come with me, sir." The toddler's mother covered the toddler's ear. The older woman in the chair looked down at her own hands. The assistant manager at his desk by the window looked at his computer screen with sudden, fierce concentration. He could have stood up. He did not stand up. Bradley did not walk Solomon to the customer service desk. He did not walk Solomon to the assistant manager's window. He walked Solomon past 4 empty teller stations, all the way to the last window in the row. The window staffed by the newest employee in the building. "Greta." Greta looked up from her Tupperware. Her face went a little pale. "Yes, sir." "Humor the gentleman. Look up whatever balance he claims he has. Then call Whitfield to escort him out of the lobby." He said it loud. Loud enough for the queue behind Solomon to hear. Loud enough for Mrs. Caldwell to chuckle, somewhere over Solomon's shoulder. Solomon stepped up to the counter. He placed both hands flat on the cold marble. He looked at Greta. His voice was the same voice he had used at the door. Polite, patient, the voice of a man who had spoken this sentence many times in his life and was not done speaking it. "I'd like to see my balance, please." That was when Bradley laughed. It was a real laugh this time, too. Loud, theatrical. The kind of laugh designed for an audience. The audience obliged. Mrs. Caldwell laughed first. Short, bright, surprised, the way a woman laughs at a joke at a charity dinner. 2 men in the queue chuckled. One of them murmured, "Jesus Christ." Then Mrs. Caldwell, voice raised so Solomon could hear every word. "I'd like to see his balance, too." "Bradley, what is it? 83 cents? Are we counting the change in his cup?" The laughter came back, louder. Mrs. Caldwell was enjoying herself now. The man in the charcoal suit lifted his newspaper again, smiling behind it. The toddler had started to fuss in the stroller. The mother bounced the stroller and pretended not to watch. Solomon did not move. His hands stayed flat on the marble. His eyes stayed on Greta's face. The lobby's laughter washed past him like weather. Greta was not laughing. Greta was looking at her keyboard. Her hands were on the keys, but she had not typed anything. She did not know what to do. Bradley was watching her over Solomon's shoulder, waiting to see if the new girl had the spine to follow a direct order. Bradley reached into his own pocket. He took out his own wallet. He pulled out a crisp $20 bill. New, the kind that came out of an ATM that morning. Folded it once and slid it across the marble counter toward Solomon's hand. Tell you what. His voice was warm again, performative for the room. The way a man speaks to a stray dog he is about to kick. Take this. Go get yourself a real cup of coffee. Buy a sandwich. The deli on the corner is excellent. But don't come back here, sir. This isn't the place for you. He was smiling. He was enjoying this. The lobby could see him enjoying it. Solomon looked at the $20 bill. He did not touch it. His hands stayed flat on the marble exactly where they had been. He looked at Bradley. He said it again. I'd like to see my balance, please. Word for word. No louder. No softer. The same sentence. The lobby went quiet. The kind of quiet you can hear. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The soft chuff of the heating vents. The toddler beginning to cry in earnest this time. Mrs. Caldwell stopped smiling. One of the men in the queue cleared his throat and pretended to look at his phone. The performance had stopped being fun. Bradley's smile went somewhere else. What replaced it was thinner. He picked up the $20 bill, refolded it, put it back in his wallet with deliberate slowness, letting Solomon watch him do it. Fine, sir. If you insist on this, pretense, I'm going to need additional identification. 3 forms. Government issued, current. On the counter. Now. Solomon reached into the inside pocket of his coat. He took out his driver's license. New York State. Photo current. He laid it on the marble. He took out his U.S. passport card. Federal. Laid it next to the license. Then he took out a second Pemberton card. Different from the first. Heavier. Black with the small Pemberton crest in silver at the corner. The kind issued only to clients above a certain threshold. He laid that on the marble too. Bradley looked at the 3 pieces of identification. He did not pick any of them up. He did not read them. Forgeries. They're not. All 3. Obvious forgeries. Greta, bag them. We'll need to file a fraud report. Greta did not move. Greta. She bagged them. Bradley pocketed the bag. Come with me. He started walking Solomon toward the back hallway. He did not turn around. He did not see what happened behind him. Greta watched them go. She waited until Bradley was out of sight around the corner. Her hands were shaking. She thought about her father in the paper mill. She thought about her student loans. She thought about the way Solomon had looked at her. Not the way Bradley looked at her, like she was a tool, like she was a person. She thought about the smile she had given him before any of this started, and how that 1 second was now the only honest thing that had happened in the lobby all morning. She opened a second tab on her terminal. She typed the 16-digit number from Solomon's first card, the one Bradley had pocketed at the door. She had memorized it without realizing she was memorizing it. Her finger hovered above the enter key for half a second. Then she pressed it. The screen began to load. The back hallway smelled different from the lobby. Less polished brass, more cleaning fluid, and stale coffee. A door at the far end said, High-Value Client Meeting. Bradley pushed it open. Inside was a small room with 1 glass table, 2 chairs, and a fluorescent light that hummed slightly overhead. There were no windows. There was no one else. Sit. Solomon sat. Bradley stood behind him for a moment, deliberately. He let Solomon feel the space. Then he walked around to the other side of the table. He set the bag of forgeries down on the glass. He looked at Officer Whitfield in the doorway. Empty his pockets. Solomon turned his head. Officer, this is not legal. Whitfield looked at the floor. Empty his pockets, Dale. Whitfield came around the table. He did not look at Solomon's face. He reached into Solomon's coat pockets, one at a time. He laid each item on the glass like evidence in a trial that wasn't happening. A pocket constitution, paperback, dog-eared at the 14th Amendment. A plastic pillbox, half full. A folded photograph. A small black biometric fob with a single button and a chip. Bradley picked up the fob first. Turned it in his fingers. Made a small puff of laughter through his nose. What's this? Novelty keychain? It was a Pemberton Holdings senior officer biometric key, the kind that opened doors Bradley had never opened. He did not know that. He set it down and picked up the folded photograph instead. He opened it without asking. Inside was Margaret Tate in her nurse's scrubs, smiling tired, the badge from Harlem Hospital clipped to her chest. Bradley glanced at the photograph for half a second. He put it back on the glass face down, like trash that didn't need to be looked at. Solomon's jaw moved once, only once, but it moved. Bradley sat down across from him. He folded his hands on the glass. He smiled, professionally, the way an interviewer smiles before a difficult question. "Sir, I'd like to walk you through what's about to happen." He waited. Solomon did not respond, so Bradley continued. "In the next 10 minutes, one of two things will happen. Option A, you walk out of here on your own, and we forget any of this happened. Option B, I pick up that phone. I call NYPD. I report attempted fraud and identity theft against a private financial institution. You get arrested in this lobby in front of those people you just embarrassed me in front of." He let that sit. "After that, I forward your photograph to the Regional Fraud Bulletin. Every bank, credit union, and licensed broker-dealer in the tri-state area will know your face by Friday. You will not open another account anywhere east of Pittsburgh for the rest of your life." He leaned back. "People like you don't think about Friday, do they?" Solomon said nothing. "People like you think about today. People like you think about the next meal, the next shelter bed, the next person you can scam before the security guard sees you coming." Solomon's eyes were on the photograph face down on the glass. "People like you walk into a bank like this and you think, what? That nobody can tell? People like you should know what people like you look like by now." The door to the room cracked open. Greta, carrying a paper cup of water. "Sir," she said very quietly, "I thought he might want some water." Bradley waved her in, smiled at her like a coach. "That's lovely, Greta. Good instinct. Set it down." She set the cup in front of Solomon. Her hand was steady. She did not look at Bradley. She left. Solomon picked up the water with his right hand. He sipped it. He set it down. He said, "I'm a customer of this bank." Bradley's smile widened. "There it is. People like you and your customer story." Out at the counter, Greta's second tab screen had stopped loading. What was on it made her sit down, then made her stand up again. The account number was flagged. Internal note in red bold. "Escalate to Holdings. Do not contact customer without CCO approval." The flag was not new. It had been there for years. The name on the account was Solomon J. Tate. The balance was a number Greta could not finish reading in one look. She picked up the phone. She dialed the Chief Compliance Officer's direct line. Pemberton Tower, 40 blocks south. She had never called this number in her life. She had been told, on her first day, that she could call it. She had been told, also on her first day, never to actually call it. She called it. Mr. Sullivan picked up on the second ring. Sullivan. "Sir," Greta said, "this is Greta Hollister at the Madison branch. I think we have a situation." Sullivan listened for 9 seconds. Then his face went the color of paper. "Where is he?" "In the back room. With Bradley." "Greta, listen to me. Do not let that man leave the building. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "I am coming." He hung up. He stood up. He grabbed his coat off the back of his chair. He did not wait for the elevator. Back in the room, Bradley was getting frustrated. Solomon's calm was supposed to break by now. Most people broke. Most people argued. Most people raised their voices, swore, cried, made a scene Bradley could use against them later. Solomon was not doing that. Solomon was sitting straight in his chair, both hands on the chair arms, both feet flat on the floor, sipping water, saying single sentences. "You're not a customer," Bradley said. "I am a customer." "You are not a customer. I am." Bradley leaned forward, across the table, close enough that Solomon could see the small razor nick on the underside of his chin from this morning. "Tell me one thing about your account." "It's mine." "Tell me the opening date." "It is in your records." Tell me one transaction from the past year. You will see them when you check. Bradley's hand came up, his index finger extended. He tapped Solomon in the center of the chest. Once, twice. Soft, deliberate, like he was testing whether Solomon was made of something that could be hit. Solomon's right hand closed under the table. Slow. Tight. The knuckles went pale. Solomon's left hand stayed loose on the chair arm. His face did not change, but he took one breath, a deep one, the breath of a man who has decided not to do the thing he could very easily do. Touching a customer without consent, Solomon said evenly, is assault. Bradley laughed. It was the second laugh of the day. It was uglier than the first. There was no audience for this one. He laughed at the word customer. He laughed because somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice was just beginning to suggest he had made a mistake. The laugh was his way of telling that voice to shut up. Bradley reached into the inside of his suit jacket. He took out a folded sheet of paper, Pemberton letterhead. He smoothed it on the glass. He took out a pen, clicked it open, set it next to the paper. All right, sir, we can wrap this up right now. Sign this, and you walk out. No NYPD. No fraud bulletin. You go home. We never see each other again. He turned the paper so Solomon could read it. Voluntary Acknowledgement of Trespass, the heading said. Below, a paragraph in stiff, prepared language. It stated that the undersigned had been informed he was on Pemberton property without authorization, that he had been politely asked to leave, and had refused. Solomon read it, line by line, slowly. The way a man reads a contract when he knows he wrote a different contract somewhere a long time ago. He looked up at Bradley. Which clause of your branch lease, Solomon said, authorizes a branch manager to demand a trespass acknowledgement from a customer? Bradley opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. That's not the point, sir. The point is, you sign this and we are done. Mr. Whitmore, which clause? Bradley did not answer. Solomon picked up the pen. He looked at it for a moment. Then he set it back down on the table. Cap up. Click closed. The plastic click of that cap was the loudest sound in the room. Bradley swallowed. In the back of his car, somewhere on Park Avenue South, Mr. Sullivan was on the phone with his assistant, telling her to clear his calendar for the next 4 hours. He was looking out the window. He was watching the traffic and counting the blocks. 22 left. He told himself 3 times that everything was going to be fine. He did not believe himself. The phone in the back room rang. Bradley looked at it. He let it ring. It rang again. The sound was sharp inside the small room. The kind of bell that does not have an offsetting. It rang a 3rd time. He looked at Solomon. He looked at the pen with the cap on. He looked at the trespass form still untouched on the glass table. Then he walked across the room and picked up the receiver. Whitmore. He listened for 1 second. His face did one of those things people do not believe a face can do in real life. It went through 3 colors. The first color was the color of a man who expected the call to be from his assistant about lunch. The second was the color of a man who recognized the voice on the other end. The third was no color at all. Yes, sir. He listened. Yes, sir. He's in the room with me. He listened longer. I don't... Yes, sir. His eyes were on Solomon now. They had not been on Solomon when he picked up the phone. They were on Solomon now. Yes, sir. Founder. Yes, sir. Founder. I understand. He said the word twice. He said it once to confirm what he had heard. He said it the second time because it had not yet finished arriving in his brain. He listened a final time. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. He set the receiver down very carefully, like it was made of something that could shatter. He did not turn around. For 4 full seconds, Bradley Whitmore, who had spent the last hour calling another human being a rat, did not turn around. He stood facing the wall. He breathed. Then Solomon spoke. Solomon was already standing. He had stood up while Bradley was on the phone, slowly, without being told to. He had brushed the dust off his coat. He had picked up his pocket Constitution and his pillbox and his biometric fob and slid them back into his coat. He had picked up the photograph of Margaret and put it inside his coat against his heart. He spoke in the same voice he had used at the door, Mr. Whitmore, would you still like to see my balance? Bradley turned around. The terminal in the corner of the room was a small one, the kind used for high net worth account lookups. Bradley walked to it. He sat down at it. He pulled up the account lookup screen. His hand went to the keyboard. His hand was shaking. He looked at his own hand like he had never seen it before, like it belonged to someone else. He tried to type the first digit. He hit the wrong key. He tried again. He hit the wrong key. He put his left hand over his right wrist to steady it. He typed the 16 digits one at a time. He pressed enter. The screen loaded. The cursor blinked against a number large enough that for one full second, Bradley's eyes refused to register it as a number. He looked at it the way a man looks at a piece of art he does not understand. His pen, which he had been holding in his right hand without realizing it, fell to the floor. He bent to pick it up. He could not pick it up on the first try. His fingers closed around air. He picked it up on the second try. He held the pen in both hands. He did not write anything. He could not have written anything if he had tried. When he straightened, Solomon was looking at him. Not with anger. Not with triumph. With the calm, weary disappointment of a man who had hoped for the 100th time that this October would be different. "My name is Solomon Tate," Solomon said. "I founded Tate Brennan Capital decades ago. Tate Brennan owns Pemberton Heritage Trust. I am the chair emeritus of this institution and the majority silent shareholder. The bank we are standing in belongs to me, Mr. Whitmore." Bradley said nothing. "My wife Margaret was once turned away from a bank because she looked tired. I built this one so it would not do that. I promised her I would build a bank that would never look at a tired woman in scrubs and call her ma'am like that. I have kept that promise for a long time. Every October I check whether it still doesn't." He let that sit. "Today's audit is complete. You failed it before I made it to the counter." The door to the back room opened. Mr. Sullivan walked in, followed by 3 compliance officers in dark suits. None of them looked at Bradley. Out in the lobby, 2 clients had their phones up. They were recording. Mrs. Caldwell, who had been laughing 45 minutes ago, was now looking at the gold leaf ceiling. There was nowhere else for her to look that did not have a person in it. The man in the charcoal suit had put his newspaper down. He was looking at his shoes. The toddler in the stroller had stopped crying, as if even she could feel the room change. Officer Whitfield, without being told, took 3 steps away from Bradley. He chose his side. "Okay, wait. I need to pause for a sec. For real. Like, just look at this dude. Bradley just spent a whole hour calling another human being a rat. A rat. Now he's begging with the wobbly lip. Y'all, if you were Solomon, would you let him off the hook?" Bradley's mouth opened. What came out was not what came out an hour ago. What came out was a high, thin sound. The sound of a man hearing himself for the first time in his career and trying not to. "Mr. Tate, sir, I want you to understand. I was following procedure." Solomon did not respond. "This branch sees a lot of attempted fraud, sir. Procedure says." "There is no procedure that includes the word rat, Mr. Whitmore." That came from Mr. Sullivan, not Solomon. Sullivan was standing in the doorway with the 3 compliance officers behind him. One of the clients in the lobby had moved his phone to film through the open door. "Sir," Bradley tried again, I think I was having a bad day." Solomon did not respond. "My brother-in-law is black." The room went the way rooms go when someone says exactly that sentence. Sullivan stepped fully into the room. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Mr. Whitmore, you are suspended without pay effective right now. Your branch credentials are being deactivated as we speak. Your name plaque is being removed from the manager's office door before you reach the elevator. Officer Whitfield will escort you out of the building. Do you understand?" Bradley looked at Whitfield. Whitfield looked at the floor. Then Whitfield walked over to Bradley's side of the table. He did not touch him. He did not need to. He just stood next to him in a way that said, "We're going now." It was the same Whitfield Bradley had used as a weapon an hour ago. Bradley walked toward the door. At the door, he turned back. He looked at Solomon. He opened his mouth one more time. He was going to apologize. Solomon shook his head once. Bradley closed his mouth. He walked out. Out in the lobby, Mrs. Caldwell was waiting by the door. She had her coat on. She had her hand on her pearls, twisting them the way a guilty woman twists a piece of jewelry. When Solomon came out of the back hallway with Sullivan behind him, she stepped forward. "Mr. Tate, I just want to say, I had no idea." "You had no idea I had money," Solomon said. She stopped twisting the pearls. "That is not the same thing as being sorry." He let that sit for 1 second. "You are welcome to keep banking at Pemberton, Mrs. Caldwell, but you will be doing it at a different branch." He looked at Sullivan. Sullivan nodded once. "Of course, sir," Sullivan said. "I'll have her file reassigned this afternoon. We'll send a letter today." Mrs. Caldwell opened her mouth to say something. She did not find anything to say. She closed her mouth and walked out, holding her purse with both hands like it weighed 40 pounds. Greta was trying to slip back to her window without making eye contact with anyone. She had picked up her Tupperware. She had her shoulders folded forward like she was trying to take up less space. Solomon caught her at the door of the back hallway. "Greta." She stopped. She turned around. She looked at the floor. "Greta, look at me." She looked at him. "Thank you for the water." She nodded. "Thank you for the chair you tried to give me. Thank you for what you did with that phone." She nodded again. Her eyes were starting to do the thing eyes do when someone is trying not to. "Mr. Sullivan tells me Pemberton runs a leadership development program. The program will be in touch with you this week." She did not know what to say. "You don't have to say anything. You said what mattered when you smiled at me at the door." She nodded one more time. Solomon turned to leave. He walked out of the back hallway the way he had walked in. Same coat, same torn shoe, same canvas duffel with the photograph against his heart. He did not look up. He did not look back. He did not look at Mrs. Caldwell's empty space by the door. He looked at Greta one more time on his way past her window. He nodded. He walked out onto Madison Avenue. The doorman looked at his shoes. This time they held the door open. The lobby behind him did not know what to do. Some of the clients were still holding their phones up. The toddler in the stroller had fallen asleep. Mrs. Caldwell was a block north and walking fast. Nobody clapped. Nobody knew if clapping was the right thing. That, more than anything else, was the audit's real result. The investigation started before Solomon Tate finished his walk back to the subway. Eleanor Dougherty had been a federal banking regulator at the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency for 26 years. She had known Solomon since college. She heard about what happened at the Madison branch from Mr. Sullivan within the hour. She opened a formal inquiry that afternoon. The inquiry pulled 4 years of internal complaint logs from Pemberton Heritage Trust. Most of those logs had been quietly buried by someone whose name was Bradley Whitmore. What the logs showed was not new behavior. It was a pattern. Bradley had done a version of what he did to Solomon at least 9 times before. 6 of those 9 times, the victim had been black or Latino. They were customers who had walked in to open accounts they were legally entitled to open. They had been turned away on the basis of how they looked. 3 of the 9 had been elderly white customers in unkempt clothing, widows in old coats, retirees with shopping bags, an old man with a hearing aid who Bradley had described in writing as confused. 9 people. 9 people who, until now, had not been the right kind of person for anyone to take seriously. One of them was a woman named Ruth Calloway. She had tried 4 times in 2 years to open a savings account for her daughter. Each time, Bradley had turned her away with a different excuse. Each time she had thanked him for his time, gone home, and tried not to feel like she had done something wrong by walking in. By Friday, all 9 had received certified letters from Pemberton with a phone number to call. Pia Mosby at the New York Sentinel got the story first. She had been working a financial services beat for 2 years. The Pemberton tip came in through a junior editor whose cousin had been one of the customers filming with their phones in the lobby. By Thursday morning, Mosby had 3 video angles, 2 interviews, and Pemberton's official statement. Her piece ran on the front page of the Sentinel on Friday. The headline was, "The Quiet Audit: How a Billionaire in Torn Shoes Exposed His Own Bank." The cell phone footage was online by Friday afternoon. By Sunday, it had been viewed 11 million times. Morning shows picked it up Monday. The hashtag See His Balance trended for 2 days. The Sentinel piece was reprinted in 3 other papers. Solomon Tate did not give a single interview. When asked by Mosby on the phone for a comment, he said one sentence. "The story is not about me. The story is about the 9 people whose names you have not yet learned." She put that on the front page, too. The class action came together in 11 days. The terms were not the usual terms. Solomon structured them himself against his lawyer's advice. There was actual restitution to each of the 9 prior victims. Not a token settlement, but real money, plus interest, plus a public letter of apology from Pemberton's board. There was paid financial education tuition for the victims' children and grandchildren. There was a private dinner at Pemberton Tower. The chairman personally walked each victim through what the bank had failed to do for them. That last part was Solomon's idea. He did not attend. He said the victims deserved to be the only people the chairman had to look at that night. Bradley Whitmore was criminally charged. 2 counts. The first was discriminatory denial of service under New York State Human Rights Law, Section 296. The second was unauthorized seizure of property, the cards Bradley had pocketed, including a U.S. passport card, which crossed into federal territory. He pleaded down. He pleaded down only after a jury watched the lobby video play in court, 58 seconds of it, on the prosecution's largest screen. His sentence was made of pieces that fit together with grim symmetry. There was court-ordered restitution to each of the 9. There was a felony tier finding entered onto his record. There was an industry-wide permanent bar from any role in financial services regulated by FINRA or the OCC. There was a community service term the judge specified by name. It would be served at organizations that worked with the homeless population of the city Bradley had called rats. The judge looked at Bradley for the last 20 seconds of the sentencing without speaking. Then she said, "Mr. Whitmore, this sentence is not designed to punish you. It is designed to make sure that what you did to those 9 people, and to the 10th, never happens at this institution again." Bradley did not respond. Pemberton's board met on a Saturday. By Monday morning, the institution had 2 new policies. The first was the Margaret Tate Standard. In plain language, no employee at any level of Pemberton Heritage Trust could refuse service to a walk-in customer. No employee could escalate security against a customer on the basis of how the customer looked. Failure to comply was a terminable offense. The standard was written into every Pemberton employment contract going forward, including the chairman's. The second was a $25 million endowment. The fund supported community banking education in historically redlined neighborhoods of New York City, Newark, Atlanta, and Detroit. It paid for financial literacy programs in public schools. It paid for small business lending workshops in church basements. It funded a scholarship for first-generation college students entering finance, taught by Black and Latino executives at firms across the city. Solomon's name was not on the endowment. Margaret's was. On the courthouse steps, after the sentencing, a reporter from a cable news network caught Bradley as he came down. She asked him one question. "Mr. Whitmore, do you have anything you would like to say to Solomon Tate?" Bradley opened his mouth. He had been thinking about this question for weeks. He had rehearsed his answer in front of a mirror 3 different times. He had a paragraph prepared. The paragraph included the words, "deeply ashamed," and "long process of reflection," and "the privilege of working toward redemption." He opened his mouth. He looked at the reporter. He looked past her, into the camera, at the audience of people who had watched the lobby video 11 million times. He pulled his coat over his head. He walked without saying a single word into a waiting black town car. The town car drove away. Nobody followed it. Nobody needed to. 1 year later, a new building on 125th Street in Harlem. Red brick, glass front, a plaque that says Margaret Tate Standard Financial Education Center, 12 classrooms, a free legal aid clinic, a small library named after a nurse. Outside, on the sidewalk, a ribbon stretched across the front door, scissors on a small table, maybe 60 people in folding chairs, mostly from the neighborhood, a few in suits. In the 3rd row, a woman named Ruth Calloway was sitting next to her daughter. Her daughter held a folder with the name of the center's first scholarship class on it. Solomon Tate was sitting in the 2nd row. He was wearing the same coat. He was wearing the same shoes. The right toe was still split. The lace from a different pair still held it together. He had not bought new shoes. He never would. The first person to speak was a young woman in a navy blazer. Her name was Greta Hollister. She had been at Pemberton for 15 months now, 6 weeks at the teller window, the rest as Assistant Vice President of Customer Experience for Pemberton North America. She still ate her lunch out of a Tupperware most days. That was her choice. She stood at the podium and looked at the crowd. She found Solomon in the second row. She looked back at her notes. "A year ago this month," she said, "an older man walked into my branch and asked to see his balance. The manager laughed at him. I almost did nothing." She paused. "I want to talk about why I did the small thing I did instead, and why the small thing turned out to matter." She talked for 6 minutes. She did not say Solomon's name once. She talked about the way he had looked at her, the way she had smiled at him before any of this started, the receipt he had been carrying that morning, from a deli where he had bought an egg sandwich for $4.25. She said he kept every receipt he ever got, because every receipt, he said, was a record of someone treating him like a customer. She said that line slowly. She looked at Solomon when she said it. He nodded once. In the front row, a teenager in a Howard University sweatshirt was watching her. His name was Devin. He was a freshman now, pre-med. He still did not know the brownstone he lived in belonged to the man in the second row. He clapped harder than anyone. Solomon did not speak at the ceremony. He had asked in advance not to be asked to speak. Sullivan and Pemberton honored that. When the ribbon was cut, Solomon stood up, nodded once to Greta, and walked away down 125th Street. He walked alone. About 3 blocks east, a young woman in headphones came around a corner toward him. She looked up from her phone. She looked at his coat. She looked at his shoes. She quietly stepped 2 feet to the right so she would not have to pass too close to him. Solomon noticed. Solomon did not react. He smiled. Small, patient, the kind of smile that has lived in a man for 68 years, the kind that is not going anywhere. He kept walking. He had a long way to go. So did the rest of us. Y'all, I need to be real with you for a sec. Yeah, the story is fiction, but the part where a man gets judged for his shoes and not his name, that part lives rent-free in my head. Because the people doing it, they never think it's them. Ever. So I want to ask you something. Have you ever walked past a man like Solomon and not seen him? Tell me in the comments. Tell me what you would have done if you were Greta at that teller window. Tell me if you've ever been the customer nobody believed. Like this video if it made you think. Share it with someone who needs to see it. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe. Because dignity is not a wardrobe. And the next person you walk past, the one in the torn shoes, that might be the one who built the building you work in.